let's get started. Hello, everybody.
Howdy, howdy. Happy Thursday for those watching live.
Happy Thursday.
Whatever day of the week it is for those of you watching in the future.
I often start my meetings with happy the day of the week. And
do you ever get it wrong?
yes, often.
Oh.
often I get it wrong.
Are you always later in the week than you think? Like, oh, happy Thursday. Oh, it's only Tuesday. AJ.
Or just sometimes I guess completely wrong.
Oh, goodness.
All right. Shall we get this party started?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will share my screen here. This is an Ask Me Anything about open enrollment, but we've got a bunch of slides to go through, but would love it if folks chimed in with their questions along the way. AJ, I've got the 6 monitor thing going on. So am I sharing the right screen? You can see it okay?
Everything looks great. Yep.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, welcome everyone. We're here at our open enrollment webinar, unpacking open enrollment. 'Tis the season. I'm John Owens. I'm one of the lead planners here at Brooklyn FI.
I'm AJ, one of the co-founders here at Brooklyn FI. I love open enrollment. This is a great opportunity to grab some benefits from your employer. It's an often missed opportunity. My best advice before we dive into things is don't wait till the last minute. Understand your benefits now throughout the year is a great time to learn about them. And then when open enrollment comes along, you watch this webinar, you're ready to go and take advantage of what your employer has on offer.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we get started, a couple of quick reminders. You can drop your questions in the chat or the Q&A box during the presentation. AJ will be active in the chat, and I'm happy to answer them live as they come in. And in the next few days, we'll get a recording of this webinar up on the website at brooklynfi.com/events. So if you have to duck out early, that's where you can find it. So today we're going to talk about health insurance decisions. Health insurance is probably one of the biggest decisions you have to make during open enrollment time. It is the biggest dollar value one typically. I mean, you could say life insurance or disability is, but health insurance is the one that's you're most likely to use the most, that you're to touch on, and there's a variety of options to think about there. We'll also touch on disability and life insurance. We'll ponder what other fringe benefits and perks we should consider, and then happy to answer any questions that folks have and do the Ask Me Anything part of this webinar along the way. And so I want to start out with just an overview of health insurance. And so welcome class, Health Insurance 101. A lot of different acronyms that get thrown around when you're going through your open enrollment time when it comes to health insurance. And so do I have an EPO or a PPO or an HMO? They're less common these days, but just like to go over some definitions. And so an EPO is an exclusive provider organization. And what that typically means is that out-of-network providers will not be covered by your health insurance, except if it's an emergency. And you're being taken by ambulance to an ER. You don't need to pull out your insurance card typically and say, well, actually, I need to go to SUNY Downstate instead of NYU. No, like they're taking you to the hospital that's nearest. And so that's the EPO doesn't come into place there, but it does come into place when there are doctors and specialists, more like primary care providers. A PPO is a preferred provider organization, which means you can go to the provider that is in network, or you can go to the provider that's out of network. Unlike the EPO, where the out of network isn't covered, but the beauty of the PPO is that you have some choice. The downside is that if your provider's out of network, you're going to be paying more than you would if you went to an in-network provider. And so there's a financial incentive for you to use an in-network provider, and certainly something to think about when you're going through your open enrollment. Oh, this plan's an EPO, but I have an out-of-network provider I go to sometimes, so I'm actually going to go with the PPO plan, so I have that flexibility. An HMO is a health maintenance organization. The big thing about HMOs, and they have become less popular, I feel like, in the Obamacare era, but it is that you need to get a referral from a physician to go to any type of specialist. Whereas with a PPO, you have a lot more flexibility. We're in a referral-based business, AJ, but it's nice that folks can find us without a referral and work with us. And there's some flexibility in that in the PPO as well.
Yeah, personal story. Growing up, my dad was part of an HMO because he was in the Producers Guild in Los Angeles. And anytime anything happened to my sister and I, we had to trot on down to the GP and say like, hey, I have boils all over my body because I'm allergic to mosquitoes, and they would have to like refer us out. So HMO can be pretty annoying. So my advice is avoid. But yeah, I don't see these very often. Usually they're with unions or organizations, maybe you work at a university. Otherwise, PPOs are probably the most
PPOs and EPOs are becoming, the most common. I do see HMOs occasionally on the marketplace. And so if you have like a short-term need, sometimes an HMO could be kind of a good Band-Aid in that sense, because they might be a little bit more economical. And if you just need coverage and you don't think you're going to get sick, then that's one piece. And then the HDHP, that's a newer one that's come around in the last 10, 15 years, the high deductible health plan. And a high deductible health plan is tied to an HSA. So in order to use a health savings account, which we'll talk about more in a minute, you need to have a high deductible health plan. A couple other quick terms: preventative care. It's like your annual physical, blood work, that kind of stuff. That's typically included with your health insurance, and so you don't actually have to pay for that. And so again, one of those pieces of the Affordable Care Act, incentivizing people to go get their annual physical to take care of themselves. They don't end up in the hospital. The deductible, that is the amount that you need to pay before the insurance company starts taking over and paying their part of it. So you might have $1,000 deductible or $3,000 deductible on your health insurance. And what that really means is that the first $1,000 is out of pocket. And then above that, there is some type of co-insurance. And so you pay a percent and the insurance company pays a percent. Some services are not part of a deductible, are not part of the deductible. And one is typically primary care physician visits and specialist visits, where maybe you pay $30 to go see your primary care physician and $50 to go see a specialist like an orthopedist, for example. And then co-insurance is simply what percent do you pay and what percent does the company pay, the insurance company pay once you've met your deductible before you reach your out-of-pocket max, which is the most you would have to pay throughout the year. And so we've got more details on that, brooklynfi.com/healthcare101 if you want to learn a little bit more. That was a lot. And so we got a mean break in here. And if I had all the money I spent on health insurance, I could pay my medical bills. Yes, it is expensive these days. Health insurance, I would kind of say, hasn't really gotten much more affordable, despite the best efforts.
Despite the name of the biggest.
Despite the name of the bill, it has not really gotten more affordable. And so when you're choosing a health insurance plan during this open enrollment, there's a variety of factors you want to think about. How often are you going to use your health insurance? Do you go to your doctor regular or frequently? Do you have an underlying condition that requires continuous treatment? Or do you go for your annual physical and if anything really bad happens? You got to think about your cash flow. How are you going to pay your deductible? How high are your copays? How does that factor into it? If you fall down the steps and break your leg and need to have surgery and you're on a high deductible plan, you might have to pay $5,000 out of pocket right away. And that's not good. Our healthcare plan here at Brooklyn FI runs until September 30th. I got sick in September. If I had a high deductible plan, I might have met my deductible in September, and as I'm getting better here in October, might have met it again. So I don't know. I'm not in the high deductible plan. I'm in the EPO because I like that better because it's more predictable. But that would have been really terrible timing to get sick and use up your deductible and then start a brand new plan year. I'd rather pay a little bit more each pay period for the plan that has more predictability. We need to think about tax considerations. There are some tax benefits to certain healthcare plans. For example, the high deductible plan allows you to contribute to an HSA, which is a tax advantaged account. We'll talk about that in a second. HSAs and FSAs, what they are, how you can use them. But obviously, it's not a very straightforward decision. You need to think about your lifestyle. You need to think about your income, your cash flow, and how you anticipate using healthcare. And a lot of our clients come to us in a period of transition in their life. Normally their careers are accelerating, their lives are changing, they've maybe gotten married, and what's a common, not everybody, but a common next thing is starting a family, or or even getting older and running into different things that you didn't have to deal with when you were young and healthy in your 20s and 30s. And so with those two things, you need to think about what type of health insurance you need now that might have been different from when you were just out of college and barely went to the doctor and got your annual physical. And so very important to think about this as you go through open enrollment this year. There are some cool tax considerations. One is the HSA. So if you do have a high deductible plan, it is triply tax efficient, which means you get a tax deduction on the way in. The money you contribute to an HSA decreases your income. The growth that you have in your HSA, if you were to invest that money, is not taxed while it's growing. And if you take the money out for qualified medical expenses, you don't pay tax on that. And so there is a very cool strategy where you participate in a high deductible plan, you're willing to pay any expenses out of pocket, and you use your HSA as an investment account for your medical bills later. Because I think one thing we're learning in Washington is that, it doesn't seem like there's going to be a magic wand where healthcare is free anytime soon. And it certainly probably won't be the case for many of the clients that we work with, especially. And so there will be out-of-pocket medical costs over the long term, and we do need to budget for it and be mindful of that. What do you think about HSAs? The other option is a flexible spending account. The thing about a flexible spending account that's really, really important is that you don't need a high deductible health plan there. AJ, what are you drawing? Oh, glasses.
I'm drawing glasses.
Got it. Like, I'm very scared. I didn't know who hacked the screen. But yes, the nice thing about an FSA is that you don't need a high deductible plan, or if you do have a high deductible plan, you get a limited use FSA that you can only use towards vision and dental, which is probably why AJ is drawing glasses, but it is use it or lose it. And so you cannot roll over significant amounts of money and accumulate it in an FSA, which is why I have this is not a sponsored program, by the way, but FSAstore.com is great, because every year when I had an FSA, I'd have a bunch of money left over. And that's why I have 4 first aid kits in my apartment right now, and a thermometer and a pulse oximeter.
So like practically speaking, an HSA coupled with a high deductible plan, a lot of our clients work at tech firms who are going to be paying for these low deductible health plans 100%. So we don't actually run into a ton of high deductible health plans. If your company does not fully cover your health insurance and you don't have any pre-existing conditions, you're a single person with no dependents, a high deductible health plan might be a great option for you to take advantage of an HSA, this health savings account. And that, that investing that money, rolling it over year over year, that's a great strategy. When an FSA makes sense, we get this question all the time, John, right? Like, should I do an FSA? Yeah, if you know that you need dental work, or you know that you need, a new pair of glasses.
LASIK.
Yeah, LASIK, exactly. My sister just got LASIK with her FSA, actually. Yeah, a great idea. Let's store almost $3,000 of pre-tax dollars. The threat, of course, is that you reschedule your surgery, or you end up not going through with it, and then you've got $2,750 at the end of the year, and you got to go to the FSA store and buy sunglasses, cotton balls. My favorite sunscreen, actually, this company's Supergroup, very fancy sunscrreen available on FSA store.
15 million Band-Aids.
Yep.
And yeah, no, exactly right. Exactly right. And so FSA requires some planning. And so if you have no clue what your medical expenses are going to be, and you have no strange plans, like, don't do it, because you're going to forget about it and mess it up. But if you're one of those people that say, I know my copays are going to be $400, I know I need new glasses, that's going to be $300, and I've got some cushion, so I'm going to put $800 in throughout the year. Great. The nice thing about an FSA is that even though you're going to put that $800 in over all your pay periods, you have access to it on January 1st, which is a kind of unique perk. And if you want to screw over your employer, they actually get stuck with the bill if you spend the $800 and then quit in March, which is a funny, unique quirk of an FSA.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
don't do that, John.
We don't have an FSA here, AJ. So update on the benefits package here.
Right.
We do have a health insurance cost comparison calculator. It is on our website. Let me show you where you can find that. So if you go to brooklynfi.com/benefits, find last year's copy of the webinar. For now, we'll be updating that. But you can also see in here our health insurance cost comparison calculator. So you can download the spreadsheet, which I already have pulled up here. You can pop in here some information. You got to enter your info in the yellow cell. So what are the monthly premiums that you pay out of your pocket? Not the total premiums, but the part that you have to pay. The family deductible, the family out-of-pocket max. If you're a single person, there's only one person in your coverage, just be whatever yours is. What are the co-pays for the various options? And then what's the co-insurance percentage and the emergency room? You come in here and you punch in your your health insurance needs and your partner's health insurance needs, how many times you think you're on the ER, how many specialist visits, how many PCP visits, and other out-of-pocket medical expenses. And then it'll tell you the results from your custom scenario and also a couple other scenarios that we built. So maybe you visit a therapist weekly, maybe you have a broken leg, like I gave in the earlier example, or a newborn baby. You can help weigh out which of the plans might make sense. And so it's not perfect because we can't predict relatively accurately what that's going to look like. But if you know, there are some people who know that they are going to hit their deductible, their out-of-pocket max every single year because of underlying medical conditions. It's a very sad reality of this. And so that's where this is really important. If you know you're going to spend all that money, how do we spend as little as possible? And oftentimes that's where, for many folks, AJ, an HSA comes in handy, because if you take advantage of the tax advantage of the HSA and the high deductible plan, you can spend the least amount if you have that stuff going on. But
Yeah, and
you got to have the cash flow.
Exactly. And where is this most important? It's really for mental health, right? You know, if you have a therapist that you've been seeing for years who doesn't take your insurance, you know, you can still use that HSA to reimburse yourself, you know, with those dollars. So, you know, we do all the math, we do these comparisons. When you have weekly or monthly visits to any kind of healthcare provider, that's where the spreadsheet becomes, you know, super, super important.
Absolutely.
And, you know, you can always reach out to your own benefits team to try to figure things out. But in our experience, most of the burden is on you to actually do the legwork. So have some time, you know, play around with the spreadsheet. If you're a client and you're stuck, feel free to reach out to your planner. You know, these are really important, you know, tax saving and money saving benefits to elect. So we're happy to help walk through what you've got.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just a couple of weeks ago, AJ had a client email me saying, hey, you know, we just started a new job. We're coming together on the same plan. We're trying to figure out which one makes sense. And it was kind of weird because it seemed like the one plan that was actually a little bit cheaper made the most sense for them just because of the expenses that they have. And the weird, you know, insurance companies price things oddly, and they had a lot of specialist visits and not a lot of PCP visits. And it worked out that the middle range plan ended up being the best for them. So it's kind of, it's funny when you look at that sometimes.
PCP being a primary care provider, your regular old physician.
Correct. Not any other use of that acronym. So anyway,
wow.
Here we are. So you might get this information on the website from your employer. It might look something like this. Is it a bronze? Is it a silver? Is it a gold plan? What's the premium that you pay? What's the deductible? What's the out-of-pocket max? There should be more information about copays and such like that and such. So I think the big summary about healthcare is this. You need to choose the plan, not that's necessarily the best sense tax-wise, not that's necessarily the most economical if you can afford it, but is the one that when, hey, I'm not feeling well, I'm a little under the weather, I'm not going to think, and I'm not going to pause and say, well, I've got a $5,000 deductible here. I'm not going to go to the doctor unless I'm really, really sick. No, like go get help. Think about that piece of it. And there's some peace of mind knowing that like I'm under the weather. It cost me $30 to go see my primary care physician and get checked out as opposed to maybe a few $100s if I had a high deductible plan. And so just some food for thought there. Bunch of other benefits that we want to think about, one of which is group term life insurance. AJ, we get a lot of questions around group term life insurance from clients. What do you think?
I love this benefit. Yeah, this is often most employers will at least give you $50,000 just as a good measure. $50,000 as a life insurance benefit is going to cover.
An FI benefit, thank you.
You're welcome. It's going to cover what basically the cost of a funeral. And you know what we're talking about here is insuring your life. So if you pass away, the beneficiary of this policy gets a lump sum. So we see a lot of companies offer very generous benefits, not always, but often listed as a multiple of your salary. So if you're making $100,000, 10x that, you would have a life insurance policy with a, let's call it a $1 million death benefit, meaning if you passed away, your spouse or your child or your sister gets $1 million to basically replace your income. That's what it is. We are insuring your life to make sure that your family is provided for. What's threatening, well, the big threat with this group coverage is if you leave your job. What would you say, John? Like 40% of the time these policies are transferable?
They can. You can take group life insurance with you very often, but it becomes a whole life policy. So it gets a lot more expensive. So it typically doesn't make sense. And so I like group life insurance coverage for folks that might not be otherwise able to get life insurance, or that don't have the big, maybe they didn't get married yet, maybe they didn't buy the house, maybe they don't have the kids yet, but they do want to have some type of coverage. It's great for that. But once you kind of hit any of those markers, you buy a house with your partner, you start a family, we want to also get life insurance separate from that, that's aligned with your needs, that you always have, regardless of where you're working, or maybe you're not working. I mean, I think that's the threat. You have to leave your job because of a medical issue, you lose this coverage, and then you pass away a few years later. Like, the financial devastation that can bring to your family would be terrible. And we don't want that. And so we want to prevent that. Love my like really cheerful examples I get to use into scaring people into making smart financial choices on occasion.
Mostly revolving around death. Yeah.
Yes.
Usually it's death, or I was having an insurance conversation earlier. It's always someone slips and falls and cracks their head open. That's the example we use as financial planners a lot. We should use something nicer.
Yeah, I agree. I have disability insurance because I don't want to fall down the steps, and if that happens, I want there to be money for my parents to take care of me. You know, I don't know. Or AJ, if you have any room.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Oh, I thought you were gonna say, or for AJ to take care of me.
Or for AJ.
Don, I will happily take care of you if you fall down the stairs.
Okay, thank you. So disability insurance typically reflected as a percentage of your salary. I most commonly see like up to 66% of your salary for this. It's very rare that it goes above that. When it's paid by the employer, and so you don't pay for it, then the benefit you receive is taxable. If you pay for it yourself, and so I have my own disability coverage, so I pay the premium. So if I were to become disabled, all that money I receive from the disability coverage is tax-free. Which, when you figure all the different taxes you pay along the way, the fact that it's only 60% of your income isn't a big deal, because between retirement savings and taxes and all the other stuff that comes out, you're probably ending up with the same amount of cash flow, depending on your tax situation. And so want to look at it, you want to review coverage levels, you want to be mindful of whether you need coverage in addition to that outside your employer. I think this is really important for folks that are high earners in very specialty areas, physicians, surgeons, stuff like that, where they probably can't go get another job that pays them $750,000 a year out of the gate.
Yeah, I mean, if you see a benefit of disability insurance at your employer, 9 times out of 10, your financial planner is going to say, let's grab that benefit. Even if it feels quote unquote expensive, let's say it's $50 a paycheck, for you to go out and get a similar policy that's not part of the group at your employer is going to be very expensive, in the range of what, $2,000 to $10,000 a year. These policies are very expensive.
It could be very expensive. I'm very lucky. I'm a member of the Financial Planning Association, so I get group coverage through them that you can elect into. But if I were to try to get that same policy on my own, it would probably cost a huge multiple more. For self-employed folks, we want you to check out the Freelancers Union. That's a great way to get some disability coverage through a group policy on that front. So it's not just for folks that have W-2 jobs. I want to call this a no-brainer, but if you are a freelancer and you don't do this, I will be personally angry with you, because this is beyond a no-brainer.
This coverage is so necessary. If you're an artist, you're a painter, a photographer, and you become blind, it would be very hard for you to continue your work. This coverage is so inexpensive. We hear horror stories on the news. We hear them amongst our clients of, a disability really taking down a family. If you have this disability insurance, a disability is not the end of your life. It's just a change in circumstance. Let's keep that income flowing so you can adjust to your new reality. Like this coverage I'm very passionate about this, as you could tell. Disability insurance is so important.
And this is great for folks that might be in a unique industry or space where it's hard to get your own disability coverage. And so, for example, I knew someone once who did voiceovers, and there's not a huge, if you ever watch commercials, like it's like 5 voices that make it on there. And so there's not a pool that you can do that with. And so this was an avenue we explored to get some disability insurance coverage for that individual. So always kind of neat to check that out. The mega backdoor Roth. This may be dying, and when one door closes, another opens, or you can open the closed door. That's how doors work. Love this meme. I was like laughing here when I was working on this yesterday. So if you've been wondering what I've been doing this week, AJ, it's this. But yeah, love the mega backdoor Roth. It might be going away, and so I'm not going to spend much time on it, but it is a way to add additional funds to your 401k above the $19,500 limit. It's called an after-tax contribution. You do a conversion then. Stay tuned. This is part of the tax cuts bill that's hanging out there right now. Yeah, that's our door.
Previously, I would have spent 10 minutes talking about this, but unfortunately, this loophole is closing. If it may come back in the future. We loved this benefit. We saw it at a lot of tech companies. Google has this, and a lot of companies followed suit after that. But RIP.
Yes. Other benefits, we'll do some quick hitters here and then get to any questions that you folks have. Dependent care FSAs. Yes, if you're paying for daycare, we love a dependent care FSA. Be sure to use the money. Legal insurance plans. It depends. I like legal insurance plans for folks that are single, don't have many complexities, don't have a ton of assets. Let's get some basic documents in place. Or you need somebody to look over your real estate contract or your lease. As your situation gets more sophisticated, we want to level up from there. Pet insurance and accident insurance. I think AJ, when we did this webinar in the past, we were kind of split on this. Accident insurance, I'm not a huge fan of. You're kind of hoping that bad things happen. Like, oh, you get a check for $10,000 if you get life flighted. Like, no, like I just don't want to be life flighted. I'm not going to pay $40 a month for those odds. Pet insurance, you like pet insurance, don't you?
I like pet insurance, and accident insurance. I agree with you. I think for most people it's a skip unless you're a competitive downhill skier or snowboarding is your hobby or some other sort of dangerous sport.
The term "a series of unfortunate events" is the theme for your life, basically.
Yes. Great book series, by the way.
Pet
insurance. Yeah, pet insurance. Yeah, I love pet insurance. I think it really depends. It's really hit or miss with the provider. So do some research. Usually each company will attach themselves to a certain provider, read some consumer reviews. Jason, who's our resident pet insurance expert, has actually a new puppy, has 2 dogs. He loves pet insurance and he's seen some great benefits from it. So Stella is the new puppy. Stella? Yeah. She's a 1-year-old lab mix. She's
very cute. She's very cute. We do not have a picture in the slides. We should add one.
Stella has pet insurance. I know that for a fact. So.
Oh, perfect. Love to see it. Charitable matching, great gift. Take advantage of this. You're leaving money on the table. Find a cause that you care about. Your company will give money towards it. Love sabbaticals.
Sure, that was your comment here.
Sure. Yeah.
If your company is letting you take paid time off,
if you're going to do it,
go for it.
By the way, AJ, when am I eligible for one? Now that we have you.
And that's the end of the webinar, folks.
Okay, that's the end. Send us a question in the chat if you have questions or thoughts about other benefits. We got a handful of questions here that come up fairly often. What is an HSA? How do I claim my parents as dependents? Well, unfortunately, you cannot claim your parents as dependents for an HSA, but an HSA is what's called a health savings account. It is a tax advantage way to save for medical expenses. How does an out-of-network deductible work? How can you estimate for that when you don't know what will count towards the deductible? It's a great question. So typically how an out-of-network deductible will work is that is based on your total expenses, both in-network and out-of-network. It is hard to predict, and to the extent possible, you want to just avoid out-of-network situations when you're picking your plans. And so that's my advice there. But you want to talk to either the insurance company, your physician or provider, or your benefits department to get a better understanding of how that might apply to you. I heard high deductible plans with HSAs are great. Yes, you did hear that a few minutes ago. But at what point does it make sense to get a non-HDHP? I would say, many folks, not a lot of folks make sense for an HSA unless you're very healthy, you're a low utilizer, and you've got the money to pay the deductible out of pocket. But I think especially even if you've been playing that game of chicken, if you're starting a family, get away from the HSA. You don't want, there's so many doctor's appointments, so many things you need to worry about. Let's go with predictability and cash flow. And then finally, life insurance. If you're single and not planning to have kids, is it a good idea? You might still need it. It just depends. What's your living situation? Are you married? Do you have a mortgage with your partner? Is there somebody that's relying on your pension or your income to help them over a significant period of time? Many folks that are single or don't have kids may still have a life insurance need if there are other people that are reliant on them or may be reliant on them for their income.
Yeah, and the argument for getting life insurance if you're young and single and not planning on having kids is, well, what if you change your mind, right? What if you're, a 27-year-old single person who's not planning on having kids, and you're healthy, might be a good time to look at a term life insurance policy, especially if it's cheap through your employer. Because essentially what happens later in life is, let's say you discover that you have an underlying health condition, then you become uninsurable. And, let's say now you're fast forward, you're 35, you discovered that there's something about your body or your genetics that makes you uninsurable. And you have a young family. Well, too bad, too sad. Your life insurance is either going to be very expensive or actually impossible to get. Which means you'll have to self-insure at that point. And we've seen this, in amongst friends and family, personally, amongst our clients. I never want to be characterized as the insurance salesman, but a great inexpensive term life insurance policy early on in your life, especially as a man. Insurance is more expensive for men because men do stupid things and die earlier than women. Just a fact, just saying.
Just stay away from people that say, watch this and hold my beer and you will be fine. That's what my one doctor told me once. We don't want to be friends with those folks. Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. It's funny. I just had a conversation with a client a couple of weeks ago. They're starting a family and his wife's 2 years younger. He never really had to get life insurance before, but now we need it. And he said, well, can we assume that my wife's premium is going to be the same? I said, no, absolutely not. You're a few years older and women rate better when it comes to life insurance. And so no, hers will be a fraction of yours. And that's good.
Something when you fill out a life insurance questionnaire, they're going to ask you for your whole history. Are you a smoker? Do you drink? Don't lie on it, but just know that if you have a history of tobacco use, your policy will be much higher. Your premiums will be much higher. And that's just a fact. We have all this research on lung cancer and smoking. So here's our little PSA that, just be prepared for that if you have a history of smoking.
Yeah, very straightforward thing, like don't lie on your tax return, don't lie on your life insurance application because you can get in a lot of trouble. And how disappointing would it be if something happened to you and your policy did not pay out because you weren't truthful? That would be really bad.
Yeah, and keep in mind that in these insurance companies are going to do whatever they can to not pay out. So keeping great records of all of your medical expenses is also is a thing that we recommend.
Absolutely. So additional resources, more events, webinars coming up, brooklynfi.com/events. We've got open enrollment info at brooklynfi.com/benefits, some company specific info as well on the website. So if you've got questions about your company situation, you can reach out to your planner here at Brooklyn FI or check out the website. But appreciate everybody coming and joining today and talking about open enrollment and benefits.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. That was super helpful.
All right. Good to see you, AJ. Good to see you, folks. Happy open enrollment season.
Go forth and elect.
There we go.
Goodbye.